were very large and thick, and I would have eaten more, but I figured Ken was rushing me out to come over here, and I figured I'd better keep it light before moderating. This is quite a crowd that we have here tonight, and as you know, we had to move it from the previous venues. I think we were pressing fire codes regulations. So, but we're fine here, and perhaps some standing room places, and people should please sit down. I just want to make sure that everybody's in the right place, and to do that, I just want to repeat a line from one of our laureates that I had heard at a big gathering of the United Nations in Rome, and he introduced himself by saying, "You remember this, David?" He introduced himself by saying, "Well, I hope I'm not disappointing anybody, but I'm David Beckman, not David Beckham." Lest anyone confuse him with a somewhat popular international soccer star, married to a somewhat glamorous model and pop musician. And in a similar vein, Joe Luck and I were talking about this in Chicago, in a similar vein, this is not a gathering of Amy Tan's best-selling Joy Luck Club. This is a gathering and a celebration of the Joe Luck Club, which has millions of members and fans around the world, and particularly in the developing world, and everybody who here gets the catalog and is a big fan of the organization, and the millions of people that are benefiting from that. Nobody walked out of the room in Rome when David made that pronouncement, and nobody's leaving here, so everybody is in the right place. And I'm grateful that you are, because this will be a really special treat tonight. For with us, we have really two giants in the field of advocacy and activism. And we're fortunate in their eloquence, because one is a teacher and one's a preacher. And they've made the world their classroom and their ministry. And they've educated the world and spread the gospel and the word, and the word about global hunger and the great opportunities that every single person has to make a big difference in the fight against hunger. And in doing that, they really represent and encapsulate what Norman Borlaug stood for. I think the example that certainly he's held up for at this conference every year, and in conferences around the world that celebrate his legacy. And for his passion and dedication. So that's what we're going to try to do tonight, is kind of capture that passion and dedication of our two laureates, and also their charisma and inspiration. So I figured we would start off with trying to get a burst of inspiration, particularly for the folks who are who are involved in the activism, and the young people in the crowd. I know neither of you intentionally set off on your careers to win the World Food Prize and to stand up in the Iowa State Capitol tomorrow evening with the trumpets blaring. And Joe Luck, you were a wandering educator and in the Department of Parks and Tourism in Arkansas, I guess, and David was a Lutheran pastor in the World Bank, of all places. that was a flock. And so I guess we can just start off by, was there a particular moment, a eureka moment, perhaps, where you realized that my place is on the ramparts of the fight against hunger?
So you're looking at me first.
Yes.
Great, good. Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here with you. Actually, I had an aha moment when I was quite young. And I thought about this for a while because another reporter had asked me. And I got to thinking, I said, you know what, I think where my first inspiration was when my mother and I went to Japan after World War II on the first, not the very first, but one of the first 3 ships for dependents to live there and occupy Japan. There were 800 women and children. We lived there a year. We had a lot of rules. The military knew everyone couldn't come home, so they wanted to take the families to those remaining behind, and we were to be ambassadors. We could not eat their food because they did not have enough, so we got ours the commissary. We could not play with the children because we had to be very careful about not doing anything incorrect in that culture. So I was quite lonesome that whole year with all those adults. But Hatana and different, I learned Japanese immediately. You know, you can do anything when you're 4 years old. It just soaks in. And we went down the lane, and every Sunday morning we would break up little chocolate bars that Mother had gotten at the commissary and hold it on a tray so I could at least hold something out to those children. As hungry as they were, they came up and each one took one little piece and bowed their appreciation backwards. Arigato gozaimasu, arigato gozaimasu. And I wanted to play with them and talk to them so much, and I said, please, just for a little bit. No. And I turned around to Otana and my mother, and probably got a spanking later, and I stomped my foot. I said, when I grow up, I'm going to make children all over the world, make sure they can come together and play together as one family. I thought about that later. I think that's when I first thought globally. And then my aha moment was when I was at Parks and Tourism. Then a very young governor named Bill Clinton, I worked on his cabinet, and I was teaching at night. I love to teach, even though I love Parks and Tourism and Recreation and History and museums that were under my leadership, including the Great River Road, of those who are familiar with that. And so I was teaching at night, and I love teaching adults. They're ready to learn, and it's great. So I was teaching a motivation class, and I said, don't just tell me where you're going to be in 5 years. Show me. Sketch it. Or cut out pictures, and I'd take magazines, you know. And I had 40 adults in my classrooms. And they did. It was exciting. And they still tell me, I did it. Here's where I was. Here's my picture when I see them. So at the last, they'd gotten together, the last class, and they said, and people call me Joe Luck. I know I'm not Sharon McDonough and all that, but they call me Joe Luck like it's one word, because I really don't have a last name anymore. And they said, Joe Luck, we want to know where you're going to be in 5 years. Show us. I said, no, yeah, right. No, we've decided we don't want to leave the room till you do that. I thought about it, and I walked over to a flip chart, picked up a magic marker, and I actually drew a picture. Not great art, but I drew a picture of some women, and I was sitting with them in a circle on the ground. Some had a baby. There were chickens. A man was walking by. There was a hut. They said, where is that? I said, you know, I'm not sure. They said, well, is it Africa? Is it Asia? Is it Latin America? And I said, I don't know, but I want to be there. And I want to make a difference there. And I said, thank you for making me think about it. A week later, I went to what they call a power breakfast for some of the women leaders. And I told that story, and I said, you all better do that too. See where you're going to be. Another week later, a headhunter from Washington, D.C. called his 5 CEO women presidents, colleges, you know, top individuals, to ask for a recommendation of a name of a woman in Arkansas that might qualify for working to end hunger and poverty around the world and so forth. 3 of those women had been at breakfast with me. They immediately said, Joe Luck. Well, he thought I must be so highly qualified. He called me. He began to tell me his name and what we were going to do. And I said, and what are the qualifications? Well, it'd be great if you've lived abroad, you're bilingual, maybe a veterinarian and animal specialist in livestock or crops, went on and on. And I said, now, how did you get my name? And, oh, you came highly recommended. Any more qualifications? He said, oh, management. I said, I got that one. But I didn't want him to know I was so unqualified, but it was a thrill to get the call. So I tried to be clever, and I said, I would love to do that. It would be a dream job, but I was a single mother. I have 2 children. I would have to take at least a $10,000 cut a year, and I can't do that till they finish their education. He said, well, I'll tell my employers. He called again in 3 weeks. We've narrowed it from 40 to 4 candidates, and the group would like to meet you while they're in Little Rock at the world headquarters. I said, Dick Irish, I know what's going on. You don't have a woman in the finals, and they don't have to pay for an airplane ticket for me. I live here. And it was the truth. In fact, the committee said, we don't know if we should talk to her. She's not very qualified. He said, I want to tell you one thing after all my years' experience. You did tell me I had to bring a woman, and I'm doing it. But he said, don't just judge the people on the paper. Meet them and judge them in person at least. So they kindly, grudgingly saw me. We began the interview, and they branched out from their usual questions, and we really had kind of a charming time, and it ran longer than the others. And One gentleman said to me, and he was a Lutheran minister, a brilliant theologian, just like you.
He could be okay anyway.
He worked in the Northeast and was very committed to hunger. And he said, ma'am, you do know that when we talk about travel, we're not talking about going to Paris. I said, I think I understand that. No, he was really concerned. In tourism, you kind of have to, dress up. And I had my hair coiffed and probably a manicure, and I'm so glad I don't do all that anymore. But, he was really concerned. They offered me the job at 4:30 that afternoon. I was so thrilled. I was walking on air. But the next morning, I had to go to Governor Clinton and say, I know in my heart you're going to be president one day. I really don't want to miss that. But I finally have found what I want to be when I grow up. I want to work with Heifer and other organizations and then hunger and poverty. And now it's 21 years later. And that's what happened to me.
See, there's our initial burst of inspiration. Dave.